What's up YouTube? Welcome back to another video. This is Champion 2D Rob, and I thought today was going to be a video response. Yeah, I thought I'd do a video response. I was tagged by Alex Bluetonic. There's been a response video going around about your sort of 90s faves. I'm not even sure who originated this question. Was it Rob Gurnaldinho? Did you start this? I honestly, I remember he was like the first person that I recall seeing this video for. So I don't remember if he was the one that originated it, because usually what I'd like to do is put down the originator's video on my description so everyone can check out his video. But in any case, I'll put down Rob Gurnaldinho's video in the description box below. As well as Bluetonic's and various other responses that I've seen as well. But yeah, I thought I would do my own. It's a really good set of questions. I have to say that the 90s was definitely a cool time in terms of, you know, media and, you know, video games, movies, etc. But yeah, I won't babble on too long. I'll just go straight into the questions now. The first question was, what was your favourite 90s cartoon? And you know what, right? Coming up in the 80s, now, there were so many great cartoons that came up in the 80s. It's some of my all-time favourites. And, like, at first I was like, nah, there was nothing in the 90s that could come close to stuff from the 80s. But the more I thought about it, the more I realised there were some awesome cartoons that came out in the 90s, stuff that I absolutely adored. I mean, probably the most obvious ones were Batman the Animated Series. That was a fantastic cartoon, like amazing cartoon. But I will admit though, I did not actually appreciate that cartoon at the time. I kind of watched it on and off, but I didn't really enjoy it that much at the time. I don't know why, don't ask me why, but it grew on me later on. And of course there was the X-Men animated series, which was amazing. Then you had the Spider-Man series, which was amazing as well. And of course, you know, the Batman animated series also spawns the Superman animated series that came out in the 90s, which I also loved. And then right at the tail end of the 90s, you had Batman of the Future as well. Batman of the Future, also known as Batman Beyond. That was an amazing cartoon as well. So there was a lot of great stuff that came out in the 90s. But I started to think about it, and the one that just kept coming back to me over and over again was this one particular cartoon. And what I want to bring up is Gargoyles. Gargoyles was a cartoon that was made by Disney, came out in the early 90s. I like to think it came out around 94, I think it was, about 94. It came out on the Disney Channel back then. And yeah, that cartoon was like, I wasn't expecting it to be as good as it was. In fact, I remember when it first came out, well, not when it first came out, like when they first advertised it, I just saw the ads and I thought, this is gonna blow. Like, it was just something I just didn't like about it. And then I watched the first episode and that was it. Like, it had me, like I was hooked. It was amazing. So I do in fact have the DVDs. So this is basically season 1 of Gargoyles, and yeah, I mean, essentially it ran for 3 seasons. So yeah, it's got season 1. I've also got season 2 volume 1 and season 2 volume 2. It was basically split up, so I think it ran from 94 to 97. Unfortunately, the 3rd season never got an official DVD release, and season 2 was basically the biggest season. I think it had like about 60 episodes, so they kind of split it off into sort of 2 separate years. But season 3 didn't get an official release. But anyway, yeah, so when I found out these were coming out on DVD, I had to have them. The only problem was these were region 1 only DVDs, and at the time I didn't have a region 3 player, So before I even considered getting these, I actually went out of my way and got a bootleg. So this actually has all 3 seasons in five DVDs. I bought this off a website. I think I bought this off Etsy, maybe. Can't remember which website I bought it off. But yeah, like I love the show so much, and like I really wanted to watch it again, that I went out of my way to get a bootleg. But eventually, you know, I got the region 3 player, so I went out and bought the seasons, and it's an amazing show. Like it essentially delves into a lot of mythology, a lot of Arthurian mythology, Norse mythology, um, as well as sort of like the old medieval times of Scotland, and it's fantastic. It's Shakespearean stuff as well. It's a lot of great world building. It's also a very dark cartoon, and it's for a Disney cartoon. It has a lot of dark subject matter, and it was definitely aimed at a sort of more of a teenage audience as opposed to little children, which at the time was unusual for Disney. But I guess their thought process was they wanted to have a cartoon that sort of competed with Batman the Animated Series, which was a very grown up cartoon compared to the usual stuff that was coming out at the time. So yeah, and I absolutely ate it up. Like I didn't miss a single episode. Watched it every year, and it was a fantastic show, guys. And fortunately, the show is available to watch on Disney Plus. So if you have Disney Plus, all 3 seasons are on there. So guys, do yourselves a favor and give it a watch. Now, next question. I believe the next question was. I didn't write these questions down, by the way, so I'm just winging it off the top. I believe the next question was Sega or Nintendo. Now, that for me is a very hard one. As everyone knows, like the 16-bit era for me was like my favorite era in gaming, and Sega and Nintendo were obviously the big pillars of that. And I love them both equally. I mean, I grew up with a Mega Drive, but I loved the Super Nintendo just as much back then. I just couldn't afford to have a Super Nintendo back then. And of course, you have to look at all the stuff that Sega and Nintendo did throughout the 90s, not just the 16-bit era. I mean, when you look at the 90s, like Sega actually had a lot of systems out in that time period. I mean, the Mega Drive was there. The Master System was still selling games at that point. Then you had the Mega CD, then you had the 32X, then you had the Saturn, then you had the Dreamcast. All of these systems came out around that time in the 90s, or were still ongoing in the 90s, which is pretty crazy. And of course, Nintendo, you know, the NES was still going on in the 90s. Super Nintendo, N64. The GameCube didn't come out in the 90s, but yeah, I mean, they had those systems, and you know, they had their successes as well. So to be honest, I kind of have to look at it from an objective standpoint if I have to kind of separate decide from the two. And it's fair to say that Nintendo probably had the overall more successful ventures in the 90s. I mean, while personally I didn't think the N64 was that good of a system, it was undoubtedly a successful system, and you know, it was definitely not a Saturn or a Dreamcast. Like, it was successful, you know. So they had a good run in the 90s, as opposed to Sega, who essentially, because of the way they treated both the Mega CD and especially the 32X, which in turn, you know, kind of soured the fan base to get the Saturn, but they also kind of botched the release of the Saturn. Saturn had a horrible run, which essentially, when the Dreamcast came, there was just too much bad blood. The Dreamcast didn't really stand much of a chance, especially since, you know, PlayStation just dominated the mid to latter half of the 90s, and was set to go on to be successful with their follow-up system. So it's kind of unfair. It didn't really have a good run, especially in that second half of the 90s. But I'm still going to say Sega, and I'll tell you why. 2 words: Sega World. And anyone who's been to Sega World, living in London, Sega World Trocadero, knows why Sega was king. in the arcades. Now, I came up playing arcades initially. I played a lot of arcades in my time from '89 right through the '90s. I was playing arcades, and Sega World was like the arcade to be in at the time. I mean, it was several floors of arcades. It was a mecca. It was a mecca of arcades. Anyone who's been there will tell you the same thing. It was an amazing experience to see, and not only that, but in the '90s as well, the quality of the games that Sega was putting out. I mean, the only company that even came close to Sega in that time was Namco. I mean, Namco was putting out some serious gems as well, but Sega overall was still king. They still ran it. I mean, they were just the best. And yeah, I have to give it to Sega, just simply for the arcades. They were the king of the arcades. And like I say, if you were there at that time, if you were playing arcades at that time, you would know that Sega ran things, you know. So yeah, that's it. Next question, my favorite game. It's a boring answer, I'm afraid, guys. Everyone that's seen my videos on a regular will know what my favorite game is. It's Streets of Rage 2. It will always be Streets of Rage 2. I never get bored of it. It's an amazing game. I don't really need to tell any of you guys that. You all know what I'm talking about. But yeah, that's my favorite game. It's a boring answer, I know. Favorite comics. I gotta say, like, even though I did read a lot of comics in the '90s as a kid, like, I never really kind of paid attention to a lot of individual issues, and even then, like, I never kind of stuck with it. So I would have a lot of odd issues here and there of various characters. Like, I used to read a lot of X-Men and Spider-Man because I was a fan of the cartoons at the time. I also used to read quite a bit of Silver Surfer. So I used to read a lot of Silver Surfer. I used to read Punisher comics. I had a few of them, not that many, but I had a few. On the DC side of things, like, I would read Batman. Like, I had a couple of Batman graphic novels. But ultimately, I didn't really read like full-on arcs, but there were a couple of exceptions, and that's what I'm going to bring up now. First one, this isn't my favourite. I'm going to get to my favourite in a second, but I want to bring this up because this was definitely one that I did pay attention to a lot as a kid. And that was a X-Men spin-off group called Generation X. And this trade essentially covers the story that I read as a kid. And the story was the Phalanx Covenant. And if you don't know what that is, essentially, if any of you that is familiar with Star Trek, you know the Borg. Essentially, the Phalanx were exactly like the Borg. They were an alien race of sort of mechanical, biomechanical beings that essentially would assimilate other species into their own, just like the Borg, essentially. And but what made the Phalanx even scarier was the fact that it was kind of a combination of Invasion of the Body Snatchers as well, because while they were turning you into one of them, they would also make a copy of you, and so people wouldn't be suspicious about your disappearance. And it was really cool because essentially the Generation X group were basically a group of young kids, young mutants that were just sort of coming up, and essentially the X-Men, as well as X-Force, X-Factor, all these side groups of the X-Men, they all get infiltrated by the Phalanx, and essentially it becomes sort of like a guessing game as to who is Phalanx and who isn't. And this group essentially gets formed by Banshee, who's one of the X-Men. He kind of discovers what's going on and he just about escapes. And these kids sort of get embroiled in it and they sort of come together as a team. So yeah, I just remember reading this a lot as a kid. So I actually went out of my way and bought the trade years later, and I still enjoy it. It's got some fantastic sort of like that kind of 90s artwork that everyone loves. I really love the artwork of the 90s. I don't know, there's something about it. I know that the 90s era of comics gets a lot of criticism. You know, they used to draw like women with these like ridiculously small waists, and they used to just love pouches. Like, there used to be like little pouches, little pocket pouches everywhere on the characters. It was just like a common a common thing to do with characters at that time. But yeah, this was a really good comic. They even made like a live action TV pilot of Generation X, which was complete arse. But please look it up. It's on YouTube. You can definitely look it up. It's complete arse though. But yeah, I enjoyed that. But probably the one comic run that I sort of read the most as a kid, and this is actually going to be gaming related as well, because it was fantastic. I loved it just because this character is one of my favorite all-time characters, and I'm talking about Spider-Man Maximum Carnage. Now, the story itself is nothing to write home about. It's essentially Carnage is this symbiote character. He's an offshoot of Venom, and essentially he breaks out of prison and goes on a killing spree, and he teams up with a bunch of other criminals, and yeah, they just go on this big sort of killing spree, and it takes Spider-Man and Venom to team up to take him down. Essentially, they're not enough, so all these other superheroes get involved, including this one, which I'm wearing in my t-shirt right now, Iron Fist. It was actually the first time I ever heard of Iron Fist was actually in Maximum Carnage. And yeah, it was a cool storyline. I loved it as a kid. I loved the artwork. But like I say, storyline wise, there's really nothing to write home about. I just loved the idea that it was Spider-Man and Venom teaming up. And I absolutely loved that fact. That was an amazing thing. I really did. I enjoyed it so much. And yeah, and of course the games. This was the comic that made me want to go out and get Maximum Carnage as a kid. And I could never find a game in the shops. I looked and looked and I could never find a game in the shops. And it was because I didn't get that game that later on I would go and get Spider-Man and Venom Separation Anxiety for the Mega Drive. That was the reason why I got that game, because I couldn't get Maximum Carnage. So that's why I went and got that game. But yeah, check it out, guys. Maximum Carnage. Like I say, it's not the best sort of comic storyline, but I don't know, I just really enjoyed it as a kid, and it had so many heroes in it, and Captain America was in it. And like I say, it also introduced me to a few other Marvel characters that I'd not heard of at the time. So yeah, and I just really enjoy it. I really like Venom as a character as well. So I was glad to see him team up with Spider-Man. So that was cool for me. Okay, so next question I believe was what was your favorite wrestler? I believe. Or was it your favorite song? I'll say wrestler for now. Wrestling, I'll admit, like, I was really into it from about 1990 to 93. Sort of that era of the Ultimate Warrior, you know, Macho Man Randy Savage, Mr. Perfect Hulk Hogan. That era I was really into wrestling, but like as the 90s sort of went on and we sort of got into the era of The Rock, and like I kind of phased in and out of it, like I wasn't really following it that much. So most of my fondness for wrestling is from that sort of first 3 or 4 years. And there were so many wrestlers that I really liked back in the day. Like one of my favorites was definitely Mr. Perfect. Like I don't know why, I just really liked him as a wrestler. Bret the Hitman Hart, Shawn Michaels, Macho Man Randy Savage, you know. But ultimately it came down to a couple of wrestlers, and the first one I'm going to say is Hulk Hogan, because he wasn't just a wrestler, he was in so much media at the time, he was really popular at the time. In fact, he was the only wrestler I actually had as a figure. I was meaning to get more as a kid, but I never got around to it, but he was really popular at the time and I really liked him. But he's not really my favourite wrestler. The one I probably used to get the most joy from watching would probably be The Undertaker. I really did like The Undertaker. I thought The Undertaker was just amazing every time he used to come on. Like the music, the lights would go down. Then you had like Paul Bearer with the urn. I just thought it was fantastic. He seemed like such a supernatural person. Like he was just crazy. And it was just exciting to watch. And I really did enjoy seeing The Undertaker wrestle. So yeah, I'm going to say The Undertaker. Next question. What was my favourite song and what was my favorite video. Favorite song, like, all right, I should explain. Essentially, in the 90s, like I am still to this day, I'm a very big hip hop head, and asking me like my favorite song for 90s hip hop is impossible because it was so many. Like the 90s was like, just for me, was like the golden age of hip hop for quality music. So I'm going to be a little bit different. I'm actually going to go a little bit earlier, and I'm going to go to a song that I heard when I was 10 years old in 1991, and that would be the Prodigy Outer Space. Now, before I got into hip hop, I got into hip hop around 92, but between the sort of 1990, 1991, I used to listen to a lot of dance music, a lot of rave music. Now, of course, when I was sort of coming into it, the rave scene was coming to an end because it was mostly sort of like an 80s thing, and it sort of began to die off in the 90s. But you know, it morphed into dance culture. But the actual sort of rave era sort of kind of died off in the early 90s because the music was changing. But I really loved that early sort of rave sound. And just one of the songs, I mean, there was quite a few of them. I mean, I loved Charlie by the Prodigy as well. I mean, the Prodigy just throughout the 90s, just legendary. Like, I love the Prodigy. But I will always say that Outer Space is my favourite Prodigy song. It just carries so much nostalgia for me. And every time I listen to it, it just brings me back to that time when I was 10. And probably the closest thing I will ever get to being in a rave at that time was being at a church disco in 1991 with all these youths. I think I would have been the youngest at the time, so it was probably between people my age all the way up to I think about 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds, something like that. And yeah, it was the closest thing I ever got to a rave because I actually got to hear all those songs like The Shaman, Ease Are Good, you know, Ebenezer Good, and you know, all them rave songs were I got to hear them and dance to them at that church disco, which was the one and only time I ever got to like rave out to them songs properly. So yeah, that's the closest I got. Now, in terms of my favorite video, I'm gonna go hip hop here, and maybe a lot of you won't have heard of this group or the song itself, but I'm going to leave a link in the description box below to the video because you have to check it out because it's so fucking epic. And the song, the video and the song is by a group called the Gravediggers. And the Gravediggers were actually, I don't want to say they were a spin-off of Wu-Tang because they weren't, but they featured RZA from the Wu-Tang. RZA from the Wu-Tang Clan was a member of the Gravediggers as well. And during the 90s, he actually put out 2 Gravedigger albums. So essentially, Gravediggers was made up of 4 members. It was made up of RZA. It was made up of a guy called Poetic, a guy called Fruquan, and a producer called Prince Paul. And so they put out 2 awesome albums during the 90s, and they made this song that came out in 1997. And I remember it was on the music video box. I think it was called Music Video Box. And I remember being so excited every time it came out. And the song I'm talking about, I won't hold you in suspense. The song I'm talking about is called The Night the Earth Cried. And guys, you need to check out the video to this song because it's nuts. Like, it really exemplifies sort of the kind of budgets they were giving hip-hop videos in the late 90s. I mean, today, this song wouldn't even get a single, let alone the kind of budget it got for the video, because it was crazy. Essentially, the video, how do I describe it? I mean, the video is like the movie Amistad mixed with Kung Fu. Like, so if you combine it with like all the Hong Kong Kung Fu and then with the movie Amistad, you've basically got the Night the Earth Cried video. It is crazy. And it's what's even more crazy to think is that this song like is not a commercial song whatsoever. Like, there is no hooks in the song. It's just verse, verse, verse. I mean, there is a hook, but it's not a commercial hook. Like, people can't dance to this song. This is a head nodding, educate your mind kind of song. something, a type of track that would never come out and get a music video today, let alone on a commercial platform, and even less have the kind of budget that it did, because it had a pretty swankingly good budget. Some great fight choreography, and yeah, it's just epic. It's absolutely epic. So yeah, check out Gravediggers, The Night the Earth Cried. I will leave a link to the video below. Just check it out. It's nuts. It's insane. But I loved it. I used to every time it used to come on the box, like I would always watch it. Yeah, it's fantastic. But anyway, I'm moving on. Now, ending it now. So favorite TV show. It's quite crazy. I was trying to think about TV shows that I watched back in the 90s, and I sort of came to realize that most of what I watched in the 90s were sitcoms. Like, I never really watched any sort of like I mean, there was Quantum Leap, which Bluetonic brought up, which I thought was a really good one, because I actually did used to watch that. But sort of the ones that sort of came to my mind initially were Only Fools and Horses and Red Dwarf. But both those shows started in the 80s, so I don't really want to include them. But I used to love those shows. Like, I really did. Like, especially like Red Dwarf, to me was, I don't know, like, I just really clicked with it. And the 90s had their best era run. Like, it's just a fantastic concept, and I loved how cheap and yet epic it was at the same time. Loved the characters, the jokes were just on point. I mean, it kind of has had its sort of bad years, you know, where it wasn't, the writing wasn't as sharp, but overall it was a fantastic series, and it's great to see that it's still ongoing even today. I actually, the other day, I recorded the sort of feature-length special they did. I think it was like last week or the week before. Haven't watched it yet, but I need to get around to watching that. But yeah, love that show. But the one I actually want to bring up, and the reason why I want to bring up this particular show, is because for me it holds also a lot of nostalgic moments for me. And the show I'm talking about is Boy Meets Walt. Yeah, this show debuted, I believe it was 92. Was it 92 or 93? It ran through the 90s. It ran for 7 seasons. I've got all the seasons here. So, as you can see, this was the very first season when he was a little kid. And this is where he marries his true love at the end. And yeah, so I guess the reason why this show resonated with me so much was because when it started, like, I'm about the same age as this guy, so we were about the exact same age when the show came out. So as the years went on, I was basically growing up with this kid, you know, and some of the stuff that was happening in the show mirrored my life, you know, like, you know, around the time the beginning of the show, and you start to leave all your childish things behind, you start to get into girls. That was my life, you know. And then obviously when you go to secondary school and you just start mingling more and stuff like that, and parties, raves, all that stuff, like what he was experiencing throughout the show and throughout the years, I was also experiencing in my life as well. So I guess that's kind of why it resonated with me for so long. And and it also was like a genuinely good sitcom. It was really funny at times, had some good storylines, some great characters, and it's proven to be a very popular show. I mean, it even got like a spin-off show like in recent years with this actor coming back. His name was Ben Savage. He's actually the younger brother of Fred Savage, the guy from the Wonder Years. And yeah, they even brought him back. There was a Girl Meets Walt, which basically starred his daughter, and he was like a teacher, and so some of the old characters came back, and it was like a continuation. I couldn't really get into it because unfortunately Disney Channel now, the way they do their sitcoms, it's definitely geared more towards little children, and it doesn't really have that same level of sophistication, for lack of a better word, I suppose. The writing was, because I suppose the initial the show originally, the way it was written, it could be enjoyed more by families, whereas Girl Meets World, I'd say, is more aimed at kids. But it does hold up. Like you know, I've gone back to watch these now, and I do still enjoy them. And again, I can say that you can actually watch the entire series on Disney Plus. So just watch it on Disney Plus, guys. Check it out. Um, but yeah, it just holds so much nostalgia for me. Um, and I'll also say, like, his love interest, this girl here, she's she still looks fine today. Like, I actually follow her on Twitter, and she's still fine. And yeah, it's, yeah, that's all I can say about that, really. But yeah, I love the show growing up as a kid. So that's it, guys. That's my answers to those questions. I hope you enjoyed the video, guys. I'm not going to tag anyone specifically. I think like some people have been saying, I was just watching GloryHunter's video, and he just did like an open tag, and I'll do the same thing. So I'll just leave this as an open tag, guys. If you haven't done the video yet, please do make a video. It'd be great to see. I've been enjoying all the videos so far, and I will leave links to some of the people's videos in below as well. And yeah, I look forward to checking out all your guys' forthcoming videos as well. So thank you very much, guys, for watching. Love to hear your thoughts in the comments below as well, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.